Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Sedaru Live. Today, we're going to be covering improving your valve exercising programs with Wachs and Sedaru. My name is Dylan McFeetris. I'm the product marketing manager here at Sedaru. And today with me, I have Kevin Koshko, our chief product officer.
Hello and welcome.
Awesome. As usual, Kevin and I will be keeping you up to date with lively banter as we cover this topic today. For those of you that have attended some of our sessions in the past, we have done sessions on Wachs a little earlier in the year, I think pre-COVID even perhaps. But we thought this is a good topic for us to recap today. Wanted to get it in before the end of the year. But it'll be a pretty brief topic, nice and quick, and we'll cover some highlights with you all and look forward to sharing today. So thank you for all attending. All right. So as usual, we like to get started by talking a little bit about drops, which is Sedaru's path to utility automation. With most of our sessions, we focus on different areas of the product and sort of how they help determine where we are in the path to the automated utility of the future, right? So today, a lot of what we're going to be covering is the concept of real-time and optimized and digital, really the first half of drops. The Wachs integration and the way that it's used in the Sedaru platform really provides a lot of value. As usual, this is going to show you a little bit of Sedaru Omni, our operations management network intelligence platform, as well as the Fieldforce data collection system used out in the field. And in this case, as usual, Sedaru Connect is providing the integration path between us and the Wachs devices and really allowing us to have that seamless single solution between the two applications. Our agenda for today is very similar to our last few webinars. We'll do a brief introduction. We're going to talk about some poll questions. We'd like to have you guys interact with us and provide us some information about where your utility is in terms of using different products for valve exercising. We're going to give a little bit of a brief overview in general of both valve exercising and Wachs, and then we're going to go ahead and hop into the demo. At the end, we'll go ahead and look at those poll review questions as a group and provide some opportunity for question and answer. As usual, looking for interaction from you guys, looking for being able to provide you the best information we can. So please go ahead and provide us any questions you have. We'll address those at the end. And also, if you wouldn't mind following through the poll questions, we find it's a helpful spark of conversation. So with that, I'm going to hop right in. For those of you that have not participated in the past, we're going to be asking 3 poll questions of you. I'm going to introduce those questions now, and then I'll go ahead and launch that part of the Zoom webinar, and you'll be able to answer those questions sort of on your leisure time prior to the end of the session today. I will give you a bit of a warning as we approach the 5-minute mark there to remind you to go ahead and fill out your poll questions. So there's 3 questions today. The first one is, what best describes the valve exercising program at your utility? We're looking just for an understanding of where you guys are, what you're trying to accomplish with it, and whether or not you even know what it is for that matter. So if you don't, go ahead and answer this question last, and then you'll have a little more information after the webinar is over. Our second question today is, what sort of hardware are you using for valve exercising? So we've listed out some of the biggest players in the US market. Also with the other options of none and other if you're using something else. And then finally, we're just kind of looking to how are you managing the process of valve exercising? Is this a program at your utility? Is this something you do informally? Or are you guys looking to make some changes here? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch the poll. And what you guys should see is a little pop-up on your screen now. And like I said, there's the 3 questions in here in those different cases. And in 2 of them, we're asking that you go ahead and select the one that applies. And the other one, there's the potential for multiple choice if you're using more than one type of hardware for valve exercising. So I'll let you guys go ahead and answer those as we get moving. And I'll remind you again at the end. So thank you. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and hop right into a little bit of an overview. So Kevin's going to jump in here, provide some expertise. I'll ask some stupid questions, and then we'll get to the demo. Go ahead, Kevin.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, so we'll go through kind of some of the categories here. The valve exercising benefits really why do we need to exercise valves? And, I mean, for most utilities, they already know the answer to that. A lot of times it's not just because of like, we have like the core ones, like knowing the status of your valves and, which ones are going to be kind of the most impactful, making sure that there's an emergency response without, the unknowns of what might happen. And I feel like that's kind of the more common like driver of a valve exercise program. You have AWWA making recommendations. There's been instances where utilities have been kind of, mandated through the health department or other due to whatever reason. But it's typically an emergency where they kind of get caught with, oh man, like, this valve, we had no idea that it was inoperable, or, we're not getting full shutdowns when we really need it. So it's usually the case where we're kind of learning the hard way that, this has now happened. We're not getting shutdowns. We're having issues when we're trying to take care of emergencies. So that's usually one of the, the major benefits that we see is once we're going through and prioritizing this work, now we can actually get the shutdowns that we need. Now we can respond to those emergencies a little bit better. It's really, we're mitigating a lot of that future pain by doing this preventative maintenance. So, I've seen varying levels of programs that utilities have. And a lot of times, I mean, we're putting out fires that are happening, the most important things that are taking place. And sometimes those valve exercising PMs can be put on the shelf due to other things. The challenge with that is when you do that and then you have an emergency, it's usually not a good thing. So it's kind of that prioritization. Now, the things that we're seeing, yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah. You brought it up, and I just, having been part of a lot of these webinars, there's literally the fighting of fires where this comes into play, right? It's one of those things. And another one I just want to point out is we did a demo on our outage product a little while ago, and this is a really big part of sort of we talked about emergency responses and knowing that a valve is on or off, or that when you close this valve, you aren't getting a complete stoppage of flow. Those are really important things, right, when you're trying to respond. So just pointing out a couple of use cases that are real world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been instances where, buildings have burned down due to like a closed, hydrant valve. And, when you're doing that audit, when you're going through and exercising valves, you're getting the benefit of not only finding which ones aren't working, but which ones are buried. If they're unable to locate, and they might be unable to locate, closed, how many turns to close, making sure that we can get a full shutdown, but also, whoa, we found this valve closed and it was, it should be open. It was from a shutdown from how many years ago that, there was a shift change, they left the valve closed, there was redundance in the system. So, water kept flowing. But in case of an issue, that next time we would have been in a lot of trouble if we had, noticed that this valve had remained closed. So those are things, when you check every valve in the system, there's so much benefit that you get from that. So, and then, from Sedaru's side of things, the Omni and Fieldforce application will walk you guys through how we can manage that work using Omni. To understand from an office and from a supervisory perspective, what work is being done, how can we prioritize that work? And then of course, using Fieldforce, how can we automatically connect to a Wachs unit? How can we track the turns and torque that's getting applied to that? And what can we do with that information later on? So making sure that we can tie all that in. So, here's kind of the high level points of that, right? So with the Wachs integration, you can still do a hardwired connection if you'd like, but the Bluetooth integration is great, and it's gotten more and more robust and reliable over the years. So, just that having that wireless tie-in to the unit, there's a lot of benefit from that. I mean, one of the big ones is safety, right? So, if you're out and you're trying to get a shutdown on, a large busy street, a large main that requires a lot of turns. Of course, it's usually those big major intersections that have the big 12-inch, 14-inch valves in there that require a lot of turns. So, if you're set up, you put the valve key on, and then you can kind of get to the cab of the truck, or you can operate the valve, kind of behind the vehicle where you're out of traffic way. That's another, important thing that this will give you benefit for. And then of course, as the valve is getting worked, you're capturing that data in real time. You're not having to take this, handheld unit and then download it into your GIS system later and then reconcile all of that. As you're out there, you have your geodatabase, you have your kind of real-time system, and then all of that's getting saved. You're capturing that turn and torque data. If it's open or closed, you got those direction, parameters in there. And then, all of that getting stored into like a work order, into an electronic format, not necessarily, some paper record, or again, something that may have to get downloaded later on. So
yeah, let's see it. Can we see it?
Yeah, why not? All right, so I'll show you a couple things first. First we want to go over the dispatching, kind of that office environment, to provide context of when we would actually issue these work orders, or how we would see valve exercising in context with other work that we're doing within the utility, and then we'll jump into our Fieldforce application, which is the actual connection to the unit. All right, so are you able to see my screen?
Oh yeah, looks good.
Excellent. All right, so this is Sedaru Omni. For those of you who have not seen this application, as shared, this is that office-based tool. We can run this on a web browser, and this will allow me to see really multiple systems within my utility, multiple assets, all within a GIS-centric kind of map-based interface here. So as I'm looking at this screen, I got my map of my service area. I have any number of different kind of symbols and metrics that I'm keeping track of. And these tiles up top are representing what it is that I'm seeing here. So I have a tile here representing actually my USA 811 tickets. I have outages and leak sensors and other things that I'm tracking. I have hydrant work orders. I have valve work. I have customer service details. I have integrations with my SCADA system. So Omni is a platform that allows you to connect to a lot of different business systems, but put it all into a context where I have a very good view and a very good picture of what my utility is doing at any given point in time. I think it's all really important because when we look at valve exercising, we are shutting and reopening valves throughout the system, right? And there's definitely a hydraulic impact to that. So as I'm opening and closing valves, there's potential issues with water quality. There are fire hydrant flow implications to that. There's customer service calls that could be happening based on pressure changes or other. So with us being able to see the full picture, now I can look at those things where if I'm seeing that there's 240 open valve work orders out throughout the district, and then I can see nearby where we're seeing let's say like a reverse flow event happening from our AMI system, this helps us tell that story much easier. Similarly with customer service calls or complaints or other things going on. So it's very nice to have all those systems kind of in one place to allow you to make those decisions. So if I look at some of the additional things that we can track here, so I'm looking at open work orders that I've created. What's nice about this is we can use the data that we have to really make a better valve exercise program. Things like, I want to focus on 12-inch and larger valves that have a certain number of turns or a certain condition. So that way I can make sure that I get those every single year, while the 10-inch and smaller valves can maybe wait every 3 years. So the ability to prioritize those, and then using a system to manage that and have all those queries and have all of those reports available, make it much easier to automate that process. So I'm looking at like closed valve work orders. I also have kind of a tie-in with SCADA here. So I'm looking at some TRV pressures, but I also have look at the the valve work that we've done this month, this year. I can pull in, here's all of my inoperable valves. So the things I could not get on for whatever reason, if the stem was broken, it was bent, or unable to locate, all those reasons why I wouldn't be able to access that. And here's those categorized inaccessible valves. I have large inop leaky valves, so I turn it, the packing is leaking, so we can keep track of those as well. And then any ones that I've done over the last hour or so. So it's nice to be able to to query these, but in addition to that, from the moment I have all of these field results, so this is basically from the valve exercising program that I'm doing from Fieldforce, we're collecting all this data. Now I have these 3 leaky valves that I can go ahead and say, well, based on these, I'm going to go ahead and create a valve repair work order. I can assign that to someone, send that off, and that'll get to their mobile device and create a work order instantaneously. So we have, a very proactive way to manage this work as it comes in. All right, so I'm going to jump over to Fieldforce now. All right, so can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Excellent. All right, so Fieldforce, this is the field tool. So not really running in a browser. This is a native application that runs on the device. For the Wachs integration, we use a Windows-based tablet, and that can be like a 2-in-1 type of device. You can use a laptop. You can use a Surface Pro device. So a lot of flexibility in the actual interface that you want to use. But similar kind of look and feel, right? So we have the map that's kind of that central focus. We have the different asset types. Depending on who I'm logged in as, I may have certain assignments that I have to work on. I'm going to focus right now on the 4 valves that we have assigned to get done. So with the valve exercising program, the nice thing with Sedaru is you can manage it a couple different ways. I can explicitly say, hey, I want my team to go out and exercise, this group of valves or this neighborhood. But you can also let them basically work from kind of north to south or busy streets first. So at any point in time, whether there's an assignment or not, I can go in and just start doing the valve exercising. And then all of those items that we work on can change colors from black to green, notifying that it's done. And then looking at our system, we can see very visually that these valves are now exercised, and I can move on to the next part of the system. So if I jump into one example here, I'm going to click on this valve inspection. There's a work order that's been assigned to me, and we have kind of a few updates that we've made to Sedaru recently that really help us understand work that's being done and has been done on certain features. So if I jump into my information screen, this is going to show me all of that key attribute information. So I have like the operational status, is it working or not? What's the size? Is it currently open? Depth, turns to close, close direction, assembly type, when it was last operated, when it was installed. So having all this information at my fingertips is really nice. But I can also see, okay, are there work orders associated with it? Which is yes, this is that valve inspection work order that I have assigned. And then I also have another tab for everything that's been done to it. So all of the history that's associated with this valve. So we can see, in this case, we've only just seen some stuff over the last year, but there was a mainline shutdown, and then they reopened that valve. Then there was a Wachs valve exercise back in May. So we're able to see the whole history of that all in one view, which is really nice.
Looks like you're a little overdue for your task there, Kevin.
Yeah, I think so, right? Yeah, this is October 28th. Like, come on, you got to get this thing done. So yeah, so there's various different forms that we can utilize to fill in the details here. So in this inspection, I'm going through, I'm populating things like what's the status of the valve box, what's the depth to the nut, what are our turns to close. But we can also do more specific forms. So if I were to jump over to this valve down the street and I wanted to just go ahead and hit start, that would allow me to say, okay, I'm just going to do a valve exercise. There's no work order associated with it, but I want to go through my system and basically mark all of these as done. So I have this link here to jump to my Wachs machine, and that's going to bring up my controller here. So for those of you who have a Wachs unit, this should look pretty familiar. This is typically found on your handheld device, but we have it right here built into the Sedaru app here. So at any point in time, now I can go ahead and hit start, and that will start controlling the unit. So this will let us know, what port we're set to. If we're using Bluetooth, it'll pair automatically and start that connection. If we have a serial connection, direct connect to it, that would show up as that port as well. So as soon as we start hitting that start button, then the machine's going to start running. We'll see that count update. The direction will update as well. And then based on that torque limit that we set, the machine will start its automation process.
So Kevin, did some device in California just start going and you hit start there, or?
No, I wish it was. Yeah, no, this is, I have the unit Bluetooth in my garage. I'll walk down and we'll start running it. That would be pretty fun though.
There is a distance limitation, correct? Right? With Bluetooth?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, and as far as how that looks, I will jump to kind of show you guys an example of that. So, if we have it, here, and this is running on a Panasonic Cuff Pad. So this is, Windows-based device. But, here we're going to hit launch controller. That's going to pull up, here we can see our controller, window here. So, and then hitting start, and then now you can see it kind of interacting with the unit. So I think it's important to, kind of show you it, how it works in the real world. So, as it, finds its set points, and you can see on the right-hand side, the count and direction and torque, all of those values are getting updated as well. So, just kind of full control, using a touch screen, being able to have that. And again, wirelessly connected. So you can also see, it already has that, that existing recon unit in there docked, it's not even being used in this case. And then here's, that torque limit being adjusted. And then, all that torque data and turns getting saved to the form itself, which is really nice. Another nice thing that we've seen with this is if a utility has like a recon unit or, the controller that comes with it, those are pretty pricey. And if it, there's an issue with it over time, it just kind of stops working. Sedaru can serve as that device. So you don't need to necessarily, pay for another, handheld unit, which can be, thousands of dollars. So Sedaru can serve as that controller standalone, which is really nice. And that's saved utilities quite a bit in the past. So, all right. So, and then with this, if I were to just kind of, use a simulation here where, okay, data was received and that had like put in, the number of turns, that would put in any sort of, the high torque that was used, torque data, all of that would be directly put into the Sedaru form here. So if I jump into field status, I can finish up my my survey here where I'm marking, what the status is, if it's just a standard mainline valve, the size, turns, if I wanted to, fill this in on, everything else that we got out there. So you can see that I have like keypad entry controls, I have pick list controls. So definitely intended to, to minimize the need for typing or any sort of, data entry other than, a very visual kind of pick list and, keypad type of data input there. We can also see, an important one, was this valve, found in the throttle position or closed? It's very common to find that. And when we see these throttled valves or closed valves, that's a big, reason why we might see water quality or other types of issues in the area. So again, uncovering this and then documenting those. So that way, not only was this found closed, but we have record that it was found closed, right? There's a lot of times where it's just like, oh, this one should have been open. And then, the engineers and other folks from the team are still scratching their head like, why was this happening last year and not this year? But, using Sedaru, we would know that, no, the status changed. The field crews found that in the closed position. Now it's open. And now that has changed the dynamics of the system. So having that record is absolutely critical. All right. And then, obviously taking the condition, right? So making sure that we can keep track of if there is issues with, not fully closing or difficult to turn. So the person who goes out there next time will have all that information available. Of course, we can take photos with the device. We can set the date and time to default to now if we want to, and then any sort of free-form comments, we can include that as well. So once I've done that, now I save that. We can see that that valve icon now turns green. That's great. And then I have another entry in history here. So there was 4 items before. Now we got 5. And here we can see that Wachs valve exercise that I just did. So it's nice to be able to, to see that whole lineage. And again, whoever comes back to this valve, clicks on this, we'll see, oh, okay, this is what they got. 25 valve turns, this is the depth. Okay, so it is in good condition. Great, we know what to expect to, when it's our time to operate it next. So, very straightforward, but easy to keep track of all the work that's being done.
That's certainly a lot nicer than when I got a piece of paper and a metal Tbar and was told to go out and move some valves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Tbar, man. That'll build some muscle, but man, it's I hurt my elbow when I was doing valves for a utility. Gosh, it must have been like 18 years ago. But yeah, man, you just like ranking on that thing all day long. We would, as contract, we would do valve exercising for utilities, and the goal was to do as many as you could. But obviously, if you're not using some sort of automation or machines, the injuries can happen if you're cranking too hard. So.
Yeah, I was looking up pictures for the webinar today. I couldn't find any with people who looked appropriately gassed from doing that. So.
Yeah, they're out there. So yeah, so the last thing I'd like to show is, let me jump into to Omni just so we can take a look at, once you've actually, entered in data, kind of what do you do with that? So there's really a number of things that you'll have access to. One, being able to, see within the Omniview, keep track of all the work that's been done. So like, the 157 valves that were exercised this last week. So being able to easily see, those, but also being able to trend on that, right? So if I wanted to look at my kind of weekly activity, so here we can look at that. If I jump in monthly, so now we have like this stock market style view where I can see, okay, here's our performance over time. And we can see, I mean, there's, days here where teams knocked out 54 valves in one day. That's a lot of work. But, being able to look at those trends and understand, okay, over the course of, 3 months or 1 month, how have we been doing? So, very nice to be able to, have access to all of that and really keep gauge of that performance. So, over the last 3 months, 1,500 valves, which is, 54% improvement from the 3 months prior, right? So we're doing better, we're doing more work. And, this is able to keep track of that. And then, even looking at things like, what's our best performance day, lowest, we had to do one just for some sort of shutdown, but then on average, we're doing about 31 a day. So being able to see that type of performance and measure that is really powerful.
That's very cool, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, let's hop back over to the PowerPoint here. And go. Okay, can you guys see my screen again?
Yeah, it looks like it's showing the presenter view.
Oh, well, that's not good. Let's fix that now. All right. Here we go. Is that any better?
Much better.
Oh, wonderful. All right. User error today. All right. So guys, we're just about wrapping up here. If you haven't answered the poll questions yet, if you could do that right now. I'm about to pop those open. We've also got a couple of good questions going in the Q&A, and so we're going to address a bunch of those all at once. Hopefully the demonstration was helpful. We really definitely, believe this is a much simplified, much improved experience, and really kind of provides a complete solution between the two. So I'm going to go ahead and end the polling now. Looks like we had about 12 responses to everything. And then I'm going to share the results. And so you guys should see a little pop-up on screen as well, showing the results of what we got for numbers. So looking at the first question, just kind of asking about your program, looks like 8 out of 12 of you are doing valve exercising as part of your preventative maintenance program. The 2 of you saying that you follow all AWWA recommendations, good for you, for sure. And then some that are really just doing them during downtime as Slack develops in the schedule. Kevin, any thoughts about those results there?
No, it's good to see. I think we're seeing more and more of that. There was, it wasn't long ago where, the valve exercise program, it was not 100%, right? It was, there was many utilities that's like, we're not even there yet. And we've seen over, the last couple of decades, really the increase in improvement where, valve exercising really is, it's a standard that we're seeing more and more of. And I'm glad to see this here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then looking at the hardware, as expected, we see kind of Wachs kind of leading the charge here. They've got some sophisticated equipment. I'd be curious to know what the other 2 out of 12 folks would be using. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us, after the webinar to provide some clarity there. And then number 3, tracking and managing, kind of as expected, whether it's everyone's got something, which is good, but some have more of the informal. Paper-based is very common. Electronic system is great. It's a good percentage of folks are doing that. Again, some seeing other, would be curious to what that is. And then got to some folks using the Sedaru Wachs integration, which is always great. So yeah.
Least surprising for me, Kevin, is that 9 out of 12 people use Wachs, since this webinar was specifically about Wachs. So probably least surprising to me. Yeah.
I guess that's to be expected, right?
I'm going to run this webinar again next week, and we're going to call it Welcome to the Sedaru and Herco, and see if we get a different group of people.
Right. It could very well be, right?
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing those results, guys, but thank you again for participating. Definitely some interesting information. Kevin, I got a couple questions for you, and then I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So the first question is it about the application? Is it integrated with ArcGIS Online and Portal?
Yeah. So
Sedaru in general.
Yeah. So Sedaru, all of the data collected is getting managed through a utilities GIS system. So you have flexibility in how you want that data to be stored. With each form that you saw where I was filling out the turns, the automation control came up, we hit start, we saved that turns data, the high torque data, that got under the form. Those values, we have what we call save targets that allows you to save those to different places within your GIS. So that could be like a historic table, that can be the asset feature class, that could be a work order record. So depending on where your data lives, Sedaru would be, built to kind of store that in your GIS system.
Awesome. And I think you addressed it, Kevin, but there was a question about whether or not this is available on iPad. Could you address that briefly?
Yeah. So iPad, there is no current integration with the Wachs Bluetooth chipset with the Apple device today. So when you register for a device to communicate to an Apple device via Bluetooth, there's a standard called MFI, and it's actually made for iPod. It's kind of a legacy term that they used for the original Bluetooth iPods back in 2003 and 2004.
I still have one.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's super reliable. I love that spin wheel. But anyway, so that program, was pretty tricky to get that Bluetooth low energy certification for. So there's only a handful of hardware vendors that actually have that. And for the valve machines, I'm not aware of anyone that actually made that certification happen. Therefore, we don't have, iOS support for this. But what's nice about it is with Sedaru, you can have multiple devices, within your organization. So you have, let's say hundreds of iPads out there, a bunch of iPhones using Sedaru, and then for your Wachs unit, you have a Surface Pro, and that's totally doable.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that clarification. Okay, so there's a couple questions here. I may just have to read it in detail. It says, currently the Wachs control unit does not automatically operate the valve per AWWA valve maintenance procedures. Is Sedaru looking into controlling the Wachs unit to accomplish this? I'm aware of that limitation.
Yeah, and this is from Clint from Morgan Hill. Clint, give me a ring. I'd like to talk to you about this in more detail as well. The Wachs unit itself has some microprocessor algorithms on it that basically make it reach a certain torque level, backs it off a few turns, and then tries another, iterated, torque level, and basically to go up and down the valve. Now, AWWA standards, differ from that as far as like the number of turns that's required and the number of, operations that it'll go up and down. So with Sedaru, we don't actually control the logic behind the Wachs unit. So the Wachs unit itself has its own microprocessor on board. That's what's determining the torque to be applied. We can set a torque limit, but the unit itself, the Wachs machine itself, really has that onboard logic that we wouldn't control. So I think there's opportunities to improve that as far as how Sedaru can potentially create a form to run it a certain way as far as recommendations. But as far as the unit itself, it is limited to the way it was programmed through the Wachs unit.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Looks like that's all the questions we had for today. Very much appreciate everyone's feedback and participation in the polls. Hopefully today's session was valuable to you and provided some insight as to what Sedaru is doing with Wachs. As usual, you can follow us on any of our social media platforms. Today's recording, as well as our other webinars, will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And so if you are interested in taking a look at this or sharing this session today with others in your organization, you can direct them there. There's also a long list of other webinars we've conducted over the last couple of years. And as always, we're looking for new topics and information that would be helpful to you guys for us to cover in these future sessions. So please feel free to reach out on behalf of Kevin and myself. We appreciate your participation today, and we'll see you next year on the next version of Sedaru Live.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.